My name's Mama Jean, and I'm an alcoholic. I'm so glad to be here in Tennessee tonight, and from people all over the world or wherever. It's really nice to be here. And just to say that, start off with saying I have a home group. It's the Big Book Group in Dothan, Alabama, and I've been a member of that group for probably going on almost 25 years. Um, I have a sponsor that's Jane D or Jane L from Tallahassee. And she has a sponsor, which is Amanda. But I've been connected with Amanda from the day she walked in Alcoholics Anonymous. She's a good friend of mine, and I love her. She's like family. I'll just say that. But we have a great. I love the progression of the my sponsorship tree. I think it's very important to me because I sponsor a lot of women, and they sponsor women. So for me, that's important in Alcoholics Anonymous. And like I say, I'm grateful that y'all asked me, or I think Amanda might have had something to do with it. I'm not sure. I'm not quite sure who Carol might be right now, but I'm really glad that y'all asked me. And so sometimes I like to start out with a little joke. And can y'all hear me? Is my reception coming on? Okay. Okay. I've got kind of a hoarse throat because I've just gotten over COVID. I stayed isolated, and these Zoom meetings saved my life back when COVID started because I had some health problems and I was afraid to get out. And for almost a year, I don't know, a year and a half or so, we didn't leave our. So these Zoom meetings saved my life. So I was very grateful when you asked me to speak here because they really helped me during a time. I don't think anything has really taken place from in-person meetings, but these meetings saved my life. Being able to come to meetings and have fellowship, and the big book says, a newcomer we offer him friendship and fellowship. And I love this big book. It has been my rock. I'm not a big book thumper. I like to say I'm just a tapper because I have so much more to learn. I have a lot more to learn. I hope I never know it all. Every time I study the book and all that, I learn more and more and more. And like I say, excuse my voice because it's just a little hoarse. But one of the jokes I like to tell is that, and this is, I don't want to offend anybody about anybody's religion. This is just a joke. But these three little boys, they wandered up to a church one morning, and there was just the guy that was in there taking care of the church and cleaning up and all that. He was in there, and one of the little boys knocked on the church door. Well, the guy got over there and he opened the big door and he said, "What do y'all want?" And the little boy said, "We want to be baptized." And he thought, "What am I going to do?" and he got to thinking to himself, "What? How can I do this? I'm not a preacher. I'm just a janitor." And he said, "Okay, you boys, y'all come with me." So he took them three little boys and he took them in the bathroom and he dunked their heads all the way down in the toilet, pulled them back up, dunked the next one down and scrubbed him around in there and pulled him up and dunked the next one around and pulled him up. He walked him in the door and he said, "Y'all been baptized," and he slammed the door. One little boy said to the other, "Well, what religion are we?" And one little boy said, "I don't know. I can't figure it out." And another little boy said, "Oh, I know. I can smell it. I think we're Episcopalians." So, but anyway, that's just my little joke I like to tell. Y'all got to excuse me because sometimes I might be a little inappropriate. I don't know, but it's just me. And I was asked earlier how I got my name. Um, well, I'll just go ahead. My sobriety date is April 1st of 1999. I'll celebrate 25 years next year, and I'm very grateful for every day. My first sobriety date was in 1988. I'd like to say I stayed sober, but I didn't. I'm very allowed me to come back and to be able to stay sober. Having a relapse or leaving AA is not a requirement. So I don't want to ever suggest that for anyone, because more people die, I think, than ever make it back. So I'm very grateful that God allowed me to come back in here. And I hope there's a few things that you get out of my story. And because when I get through talking, I never know what I'm going to say. I just ask God when I go in the bathroom, I say, God, help me to just purvey some kind of message and help me be great. No, I'm just kidding. That's a joke. That's just a joke. I just ask God to help me just to be able to deliver some kind of message. But so I just hope that I hope you understand that God did life that I just thought I was doomed to for all my whole life. And in the beginning, it was a fun life. Don't ever get me wrong. Drinking was fun. I had a lot of joy in my drinking, but it turned on me at a stage in life. And it became where I could no longer control the amount of alcohol that I was going to take or when I was going to drink. I would say I wasn't going to drink then, and that was when I was going to drink, or I was going to drink. It's a crazy. So today, I might be more of a woman of dignity. I'm a wife, a mother, a grandmother, and I'm very grateful for all those titles, which I never thought that I would ever have. But I was born in South Alabama, little northern Alabama. I was born in a little town in North Alabama. Well, it was a bigger town in Alabama, but in a suburb of Birmingham. And then my parents moved to a little town in South Alabama when I was about 4 years old, maybe 3 or 4, and moved to Ozark, Alabama. And both my parents worked on Fort Rooker. My father was assistant chief at fire department, and my mother was a supervisor in military finance. And they had really they always talked about their life, and they wanted to give. And I had 2 older brothers. One I don't remember ever living at home because he was so much older than me. He was like 13 or 14 years older than me. My other brother was only 2 years older than me. So pretty much just remember it being me and him. But my parents always wanted to give us more than what they had. I don't know if the Depression was coming along when they were growing up, but my dad was born and my mom was born in 24. My dad was born in 29. So my mother was a little older when she had me finally, but they were just hard working, good, you know, I I mean good people, good Southern Baptist people. I mean, I grew up in the Baptist church. They took us to church. They wanted to instill in us a knowledge of God, and my parents got everything they needed from church. I mean, I don't knock church because I'm involved in church today, but I don't knock it. I went to church my whole life and never fully, even though I was what you would say baptized growing up, I was never fully, I don't think, accepted all that. My grandparents, my parents, um, everybody pretty much went to church and they lived their lives, that they were good people. I can't say anything more about them, but that they were just, I don't have one of the stories where my parents were not good people. Um, I had something happen to me when I was a little girl. I was probably about 3 or 4, and I don't talk real open. This is a place we share our story in a general way. But it happened with one of my family members, and I don't know if that affected me later on. I can't say that that's the reason I'm alcoholic. I think my brain was different when I took a drink. It fulfilled all that emptiness inside of me. I don't know. I loved alcohol from the first day I ever took my first drink. I fell in love with alcohol. It's probably about 13 or 14 when I took my first drink. My daughter, I just don't know what I would think if I had a daughter that started drinking that age. I don't know. But anyway, I grew up in about 14 years old. When I was old enough, all the kids in the neighborhood got a motorcycle. And I wanted one too. Well, I didn't get one. And that year, I made it the most miserable Christmas. And my parents usually they would go out and they're about to take out a loan every Christmas. So me and my brother could have just one of the best Christmases. My mom loved Christmas. It was her favorite holiday. She decorated the house. She did everything. And they had Christmas all under the tree. And we woke up on Christmas morning, we had all our presents under there and presents wrapped. And it was just the most magical time of my life during Christmas. But that year, I made it my family's most miserable. I pitched a fit. I cried all day. My dad should have went biggest hickory or got his belt and give me one of the biggest beatings I ever had. But I made him miserable. I made him really miserable. And so all the kids in the neighborhood got a motorcycle. I didn't. So that year, about a week after Christmas, my dad we went down to the Honda shop and he got me a little Honda CB 125. I was so excited. I rode that motorcycle up and down the roads, down the dirt roads. We had a big clay pit. I rode with the kids. We had a blast. And I think it was probably not even close to a year from there. We were at my neighbor's, one of my little friend's house, and we broke into her mom's liquor cabinet. And we got pretty toasted being kids and drinking shots of whiskey and all that. And I got in a wreck on my motorcycle going around the neighborhood. I was going around a curve. I couldn't judge it. I was young. I slid down, scraped all the skin off my arm, all my side, and I never saw that motorcycle again because my parents knew that I had alcohol in my breath. When my mom took me to the doctor, you didn't go to the ER so much back then unless you really had a problem. So my mom took me to the doctor, and they had to stitch up my arm and bandage it and all that stuff. But so I never saw the motorcycle. My dad put it for sale. He said, "You'll never see that again. You lost your rights to have that. We trusted you," just all those things. But I never saw the motorcycle again. And I don't know how to, motorcycle was for me like, I just found some freedom in it. I mean, I loved it. And anyway, I went on through school, and I'm going to tell you, I went to jail 3 times before I was 18 when I was in high school. I got 2 DUI. I got for marijuana, and I got a DUI. The problem was when I was on probation, I got the DUI. And my judge that I had to go in front of, he could have revoked my probation being a young girl and could have sent me off to one of the, teenage places, but he didn't. He saw something in me, and he asked my parents that day in court. He said, "Do y'all go to church?" And my mom said, "Yeah." And my dad was there. My mom and dad was in court. They had an attorney. They're trying to do everything they could to help a daughter that had gone wild at 17. And the judge said, "Well, I want to ask you something. Has your daughter been going to church?" And my mom said, "No." They had little control over me by the time I was a senior in high school. Although they tried, they really tried everything. They didn't know what to do. I remember nights my mom just cried and cried, and she was so heartbroken where I didn't come in 2 and 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning on the weekends when I was in high school. And the lawyer told my mom, said, "We want you to have her in church every Sunday. And would your pastor write a letter at once a month and telling us that your daughter was in church?" And my mom said, "Yeah." I can't imagine an attorney doing that today. They'd probably get, I don't know, something slapped on them for breaking some kind of constitutional rules on everything. But so he sentenced me to church and reporting to my pastor. I guess he saw he knew that I needed some kind of spiritual help. And I don't know, he could have been in the program or something. I don't know. But I was in church. I may have stayed out late on a Saturday night and pulling my pantyhose on, trying to put something on, and having a friend drop me off in front of the church door on Sunday morning. Not. And my parents tried to have more control over me. I graduated early in school. because I like to say I was smart, but I was born in September, so I started school early. So I graduated earlier than most kids. And so the first year after I graduated, my best friend, her brother died, and she inherited some money. And she bought her a Harley. And I told you I love motorcycles. She bought me one too. And that was my first one. I've had 5. And so she bought me a Harley. She bought me a 69 900. And if you know about motorcycles, it shifted on the other side, but I could ride that thing. I'm gonna tell you, I rode better than most men, and I'm not bragging, but I could ride I could ride a motorcycle, and I always have. But I fell in love with them. The only thing is, there was this little club in Dothan, and by this time, um, I had graduated from high school, and I was trying to go to college, but I really wouldn't go. I skipped classes. I probably I finally checked out of high school of college before they gave me really bad grades and all that stuff. So I finally checked out of college. I just couldn't go. I was too wild, drinking, partying all the time. By the time I would say I was 18 or 19, I was living in a full blown alcoholic state, the full blown for me. And for me, I was never a daily drinker, but when I took a drink, I could not stop. And so I was a periodic at the time drinker, and never knowing, like I say, how much I was going to drink. I don't know about y'all, but we had these drinks down here, a wine called Thunderbird, MD 2020, Wild Irish Rose, and they were cheap. I mean, as a teenager, we could get a bottle of MD 2020 and all of us get wrong. We could drink a bottle of, or you could get a half a gallon of Thunderbird for $2. And I said, what's the price? Dollar twice, and you could get you could get pretty tight on that, But anyway, but so anyway, but by the time I was 17 or 18, I had gotten involved with a motorcycle club. And so they didn't really know what to do with me. I mean, I was hanging around at this bike shop, this motorcycle shop, and I wanted to be a part of that so bad because something inside of me desired to be a part of something. And they made me feel like it was such a family. So I became their club mama. And so that's how I got my name, Mama Jean. Now, how it came into AA, I'll tell you this before I go back, is that some of my brothers got sober in Alcoholics Anonymous in a different town in Level Plains, Alabama. And they saw me and they said, oh, Mama Jean's sober. So I picked up the name in Alcoholics Anonymous, Mama Jean, from them, calling me Mama Jean. But anyway, I got involved with this motorcycle club, and I was their club mom, and I just not going to tell a whole lot what that entails, but it's being really friendly to the men. And I don't want to surprise any of y'all, but I wasn't a virgin when I came in Alcoholics Anonymous, But that's kind of a joke too. But anyway, I was probably one of those people that the 12 and 12 talks about, the fallen women, and all that stuff. So I'm grateful they let me in. I'm glad the doors weren't shut to me when I finally made it here. But so I rode motorcycles with those guys, and I finally left that group, and the Harley Club, and I got involved with a different club that was more of what we call a 1%er club, and I rode motorcycles with them, and I had a patch on our back, and the women wore patches that said property of. And mine just had the club name, and it said mom on the bottom because I didn't have a property of a a person you didn't normally have. So I tell you, I loved it. I mean, I fell in love with bikers. I fell in love with the lifestyle. I fell in love with the people. And all the time when I would go back home, my mom would say, Jean, and my dad would sit me down. Before I'd sneak out again and be gone for days at a time, they would say, please do something with your life. Please, that's all we want is for you to just do something with your life. And I remember my mom back there, just before I would leave, she would just be back in her bed just crying, and I could hear her prayers. And I can hear her prayers today almost. She died in 1992, but I could hear her praying from her bedroom about her daughter. And I was the only daughter my dad ever had. He had high hopes and dreams for me. And I've heard his prayers too. And I don't know if that's what got me to Alcoholics Anonymous, because I had a praying grandmother too, I'll tell you. My granny'd struck a prayer out in a minute if something went wrong. But anyway, they finally talked me into coming on home. And I'll tell you, I was kind of tired by then. I got really tired by the time I was 19 or 20. I was probably around the 20s. So they talked me into going to nursing school. I thought that'll be really good. My mom and dad's, this is how they got me. They said, we'll pay for your schooling. We'll do everything. You just settle down during the week. You go to school, you make your grades. We give you a car. Here's your credit card for gas. And you can do the weekends are yours. Come home, don't come home. We don't care. But on Sundays, we want you back in the house to be prepared for Monday. Fridays, you can leave. We don't care as long as you're making your grades. Hey, that was a great deal to me, right? So I graduated from nursing school a couple of years. Within a little over a year, I had my LPN degree. And so I never had a true desire to want to go back to school. But anyway, I was partying still at this time, and I met this guy. And my story's riddled with men, but I'm not going to talk about several of them. But my first husband, we were in a bar and we met and fell in love the first night, I guess what you call it. I don't know, heat, lust, love, I don't know what you call it. But anyway, I went home, we got married. And the way we got married was it was a weekend, and I was working as a nurse, and he worked hanging sheetrock for a living. He made really good money. And it was close to the weekend. He knew I had a bank that was open later, and he said, hey, would you do me a favor and cash my check for me? And we weren't married at the time. And I said, sure. And we were getting ready to go out to a bar. And I said, sure, I will. We'll go by my bank. I seen his check and how much money he made. And I went, I'm marrying this guy. He's gonna have money. He's got money. You know, I'd never made a whole lot of money being an LP, and I think I started out at $6 an hour, which was pretty good back in 1980. And so we got married. It was shortly after that we got married. We moved into his mother's house. We spent our honeymoon night at his mother's house. But anyway, just that marriage didn't last long. How could it? I was in it. You know, I'd sold my Harley. I wasn't riding anything, and it couldn't have lasted. But so then my parents had retired by then, and they were living at the beach, and so I just moved down to Panama City on the beach where they were living, because they had always had a place there growing up. You know, when I was growing up, you know, they'd take off on the weekends and go stay at the beach. So I moved down there, and I didn't live there, but probably I came back to Dothan where I had been living. I got into RN school. I went back to the hospital I was working in. And y'all know the field I worked in? It was called, the floor on the hospital is called BMU, and that's Behavioral Medicine Unit. It's a lockup psychiatric unit. And you know why I worked there? Because I fit in. You know, a lot of our patients, we had alcoholics and drug addicts, and they would say, oh, Jean, I need a drink. And I would think, yeah, I need one too. And they would say, oh, I'm hearing voices or something ain't right. And I think, yeah, I'm doing the same thing. So I felt very comfortable on that floor, you know. And so I got my job back, and they were paying for my schooling. And one of the amends, I'm gonna tell you, you know, how dirty I was. One of the amends to my parents I had to make was when I was in nursing school, I got a scholarship from the hospital. I signed a thing that said I'd work 2 years with them after I got out of RN school. And you know, my parents were giving me a check every quarter for my tuition. I was pocketing that. And this is how, you know, I may not have been nasty like a lot of people, but I find this as stealing, you know, just like everything. I can't really compare myself to other people today, but, you know, I just did some nasty things. And, you know, the book says that we won't regret the past. And I failed yet to live in that. I know some are quickly that, you know, I have a hurt inside of me for the way I treated my parents. Sometimes, sometimes I ask God to remove it, and I try to live the best that I can today. But I was pocketing that check, and I bought me a Harley, and I was riding that Harley while they were putting me through school and paying my rent and helping me with everything. I was still working as a nurse, but it wasn't enough to support myself. So they were helping me. But I was riding my Harley, and to find me a different job because it was too much working at the hospital. So I went to work. I applied around town, and this got to be around 1988 or so. And I applied around town, 87, and I got a job at the Haven. And I don't know if the Haven is a treatment center, 28-day bed treatment center. It was for alcoholics. Today it's to alcoholics and drug addicts. But back then, pretty much all we had in there was just alcoholics. I've seen over the times it progressed now that most everywhere has dual addictions for everybody, but it was a treatment center for alcoholics. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just a nurse there. I had no idea. And so, we did detox. So, I went through orientation, and I went in on Friday at the Haven, and I stayed Friday night all day, Saturday evening, Saturday night, and Saturday day. And I went home after 7 to 3 on Sunday. So I was a weekend nurse that lived there, just like the other, people that work there. They stay there all weekend. And I had a bed in the nurse's station at night. I'd shut the door, lock it, and I'd sleep there. Well, I would, and they had the biggest meetings in Dothan at the Haven on Saturday night. Everybody from all the groups came to the Haven. And on Sunday afternoon, they have a meeting in an ask it basket where clients can put their names and their questions in there. And people from all over the area would come to these meetings. It was a big fellowship. I mean, everybody was joyful and happy to see each other. And I would sit in the meetings because it was a speaker meeting on Saturday nights, and I would listen. And I got to listening and thinking. And then I had some friends that I had a big keg party at my house, and they got a DUI leaving my house, and they got sent days in the Haven because we had a court referral program. And a lot of people were having to come in the Haven and do, 28 days there. And one of them told our counselor, and one of the counselors came to me and said, "Gee, were you a part of this guy getting a DUI?" I said, "I didn't force nothing down his throat." I didn't know. I didn't have a clue where I was working and how important and AA and people getting sober, how important that was. I thought people would just come in there and they'd do out their court sentence and they could get out and go back and learn how to drink successfully. I thought, this is stupid. Why would anybody want to quit drinking? Because I never thought I wanted to. Well, the more I listened, the more it began to soak in. I wonder if I got a problem. These people got problems. I look back at my life and I think I've had a good life, but I wonder if I can quit. So the next time I started drinking, I thought, I'm going to try to quit. I couldn't. I took a drink. And they say here sometimes I took a drink and the drink took me. And that's what happened. I could not stop. And yeah, I was locked up in the Haven all weekend. But during the week, if I put on a bender, I thought, why would anybody drink on a Tuesday or Wednesday when I never understood anybody having a few drinks. From the get, I drank to drink, to get drunk. I don't think I might have sometime, but I never wanted to drink unless there was enough for us, even as a teenager, unless there was enough for us all to get just smothered. I blacked out, drank from the time almost from the time I started drinking. I thought that was blacked out. I just didn't like hearing as I got older what I did when I blacked out. I did some really dirty things, especially when I was riding with those clubs. There's a lot of things that just, immoral. I just all the things that I did. Fight. I loved to fight. I love to go in bars that I could feel a little bit more superior. I thought I felt superior, or something. And I don't know why I ever felt that way, but I just went to some really low class bars. That's where I like to hang out. I mean, I just felt at home there. I don't know. And well, and I could usually pick up a man when I went in there at night. That's just the truth. And I must have always searching for something outside myself to fill that hole in my soul that was never right. Ooh, I got to speed up. Anyway, so eventually I picked up a chip. It was a Saturday night meeting, the biggest meeting in Dothan. I got up, the nurse gets up that's on duty and walks up there and picks up a chip. Everybody's elated. They're all excited. Our nurse is getting sober. Now, let me tell you something today. In a treatment center today, if a nurse got up and walked up and picked up a chip, they would not only have her, they would have her in treatment, they would have her license, they would have everything. We just didn't have that at that time in Alabama. But anyway, so I got sober. That was my first bout. I thought this is the life for me. And I got a sponsor. She worked at the Haven because I thought I knew all about everything working at the Haven. But anyway, so the only thing with my sponsor, I want to tell you this, is she was a wonderful lady. She was a cook. She loved me beyond compare. First person other than my mom and dad that I thought loved me unconditionally. She loved me. Anybody was mad at me, she was, but we never cracked this big book. She went to a lot of meetings. She stayed sober her whole sobriety until she died. And she was an elderly woman. She was a good woman. I don't have anything to bash about her. So not about her. This is my story. We just never picked up the big book. We never went through the steps. We never read the book. We never did anything. And so in 1992, my dad called me and he said, your mom's very sick. You need to get down here to the beach. And I said, okay. I'd already graduated from RN school. I was working back at the hospital. I'd left I'd left the Haven because I got better pay and all that. I went back to the hospital as an RN on BMU. And I got down to Florida and my mom was in the hospital and they said, your mom has a tumor and it's invaded her heart, the lining of her heart. So her heart can't pump well. And I thought, well, we'll have time to get her home and, she'll have some time. We can have some time with her. But the doctor said no, that she wasn't going to live very long because my mom chose not to have that drained because you could have that fluid drained, but she had a terminal illness and it didn't look very good. And they didn't have as much as they have today on cancer research. And so she never made it out of the hospital. She lived 7 days and died. So when my mom died, and I had my mom and dad on the God seat. I'd always depended on them, self-reliance, and on someone else, on humans. And so by my mom dying, it disappeared. My God disappeared. Even though my dad was living, I was hurt. I was devastated. I didn't know how to feel that. I did was I reached for a drink. That drink set me off in a chain of motions for the next till 1999. That was 92. That I was out just wild again. I barely held a job. I didn't want to come to work on Fridays. I didn't want to come to work on Mondays. But anyway, during this time, I met a man, got married again, and he had 2 small children. And I was working at the hospital, and I got promoted to a clinical coordinator over 3 departments, and that was a big deal. It was hard for me to maintain, though. It was so hard. I was having a hard time drinking and all that. And so this lady messaged me just out of the blue in Alcoholics Anonymous, and she said, Jean, you were on my heart today, and I just want to let you know that I was thinking of you. And see, I had sponsees and all that before, and I had to tell them that I drank. But anyway, she said, we need you in Alcoholics Anonymous. And that just piqued my ego or something. I don't know what it did, but I thought, oh, they need me. It's a joke. They don't need me. But anyway, um, she was very kind, and she said, "Would you come to a meeting?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, I miss seeing you." And I thought, I need help. I really need help. And I don't know anywhere I can go. I'm going to go back to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I thought to myself, but I'm doing it different this time. I got back into Alcoholics Anonymous and I asked her to be my sponsor. And she was heavily involved in service. And I was the first, second, or third week. She took me to district and she signed me up as the CPC chair. She said, "You're a nurse. You can work with the professional community. This is going to be your job." And I thought, God, I don't even know what that stands for. I don't know. I got involved in service straight off the get. She took the book down and we started, during this time, I had met a lady, and her and her husband were having book studies at their house. And I got involved with the big book. And this lady took me through the steps. And she was a good person. And everybody, a lot of good people know, but what I'm saying is she took time with me. And we started the first and went to the book, and I took the steps were very important. And so this big book, actually, I could say, helped save my life, because I was headed down a road of disaster. There's no way I could have continued being a wife, I never had any children, but my husband brought two small children into he had a little girl and a little boy. And I was trying to do the best I could. But when you're drinking, it's hard to be it's just hard to be a good parent. It's hard to be a good nurse, hard to be a good wife, hard to be a good anything. But so I got back involved, and I've been heavily involved in AA since that day. I got involved in my home group. I became working in service in my home group, and I became, I was different positions in my home group, and then I was a GSR, and then I was involved in district, and I was alternate DCM, and then I was DCM in my district, and but I'm gonna tell you, when I was DCM, I learned so much about myself. All the I thought, I'm going to show these people something. I thought, oh, I'm going to run this place. I'm a DCM. And that's when I really got slapped upside the noggin. I learned that I didn't run anything, that I worked for the district. And that's going to area assembly and being around all those people. I, 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 I was very humbled. I don't know if I was, humiliated, but I learned, I'm not going to say I'm humble, because they say if you're humble, then you're probably not, or what all that. But I really saw what it was like for people to live a life like that, a selfless life where all they thought about was, and I know nobody's perfect, but I met some great people. And I had a mentor that lived in Florida, in Tallahassee. His name was Diz T. And he meant so much to me. He taught me so much about the book and service and people at area assembly. I'd go in area assembly and I'd stay at weekends. I probably went to area assembly for 15 years without missing one. The first time I went, when I was a young girl, I thought all you did was play poker. I didn't know they were having committee meetings and all this stuff up at area assembly. But when I came back and got sober and I was serious, I realized I learned what area assembly was about. And it was some of the greatest times of my life being in service. And I never really held any positions in area assembly, but I went, and I made great friends there from all over the world, all over the place. My sponsor, Jane, she became my sponsor probably about, I don't know, I'm gonna say 8 to 10 years ago. I had a sponsor that died, and then I had one that relapsed, and but Jane became my sponsor, and she speaks all over the world. And I've met some great people. She's married to Miss Polly's son, James. And I've gotten to know people, great people that I would never thought that I would have gotten to meet in Alcoholics Anonymous, that have loved on me, that have given to me, that have given to my soul and showed me things and taught me how to live. Even though my parents, I got away from those, and they helped me. I believe I walk more the path that I learned when I was growing up now today than I ever have. And I've learned so many things, about the book. And I sponsor women and I sit down with them and I talk to them and I tell them, look, I love Joe and Charlie. I love people that love the book. And they're the people, some of the first people that unlocked this big book for me and helped me to have an understanding that was simple. And they've helped me with that. And so I love sponsoring people and I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm very involved today. I make meetings. We have a Nooners group and I love the Nooners group. And those women spoil me and I spoil them and we have a great time. And the men too. I can tell you that I am a woman of dignity today. Me and my husband have been married almost 30 years. We've been together over 30 something years. And I never thought about cheating on him or having, any of that stuff. Alcoholics Anonymous has helped change me as a woman. And I'm very grateful for that. My daughter is wonderful. She's a school teacher and she has two beautiful children. And I have two beautiful grandchildren. And they're my heart and soul. My granddaughter will be a teenager next year. My daughter's not knowing what to do with her. I can't help a whole lot because I didn't know what to do with her. But all I can do is be the best example that I think God would want me to be. And that's what I try to live up today. Each day, 84 through 88 saved my life. As I worked the steps, when I did my inventory, my sponsor had me go home, take my hour. I had my list started and she had me reading that night, 84 through 88, doing steps 10 and 11. And sponsorship. I'll say it again. Sponsorship has saved me in this program. Some days I've gotten up and loved on those girls and they have loved on me. Fearless. I know my time's getting short, but I'm very grateful for any opportunity I have to share my story, to tell others of what God has done in my life. He's worked miracles. Like I say, I just try to be the best version of me that I can do each day and ask God to help align my will with His. And I have a little thing I like to read before I close. And thank you so much for asking me to speak. I appreciate spending this time with y'all. And I like to come back and visit y'all some. My home, this little poem, someone gave it to me. This is my big book. I don't know if y'all can see parts of it, but this is how it looks. This is the one I usually carry because it has a lot of my heart in it. But I'll say this, Diz, that was my mentor in Tallahassee. He was a historian, Diz T. He was a historian. He loved Alcoholics Anonymous. And because of that, I collect books. I've got first edition, second edition, third edition, books that are special. These books are special to me. This book, you couldn't give me $1 million for this book. And you know what page this is? That page is 69, where this thing's tore up at, because I've read it to death. It says harder work with others when you're having problems. Well, that's why I got a string of sponsees. I'm just kidding. Anyway, this little poem says, after a while, you learn the subtle difference between holding a hand and chaining a soul. And you learn that love doesn't mean leaning and company doesn't mean security. And you begin to learn that kisses aren't contracts and presents aren't promises. And you begin to accept your defeats with your head up and your eyes open, with the grace of an adult, not the grief of a child. And you learn to build all your roads on today, because tomorrow's ground is too uncertain for plans. Sunshine, you learn that even sunshine burns if you get too much. So you plant your own garden and you decorate your own soul instead of waiting for someone to bring you flowers. And you learn that you really can endure, that you really are strong, and you really do have worth. And with every goodbye you learn. Thank you very much. My name's Jean, and I am an alcoholic.